Hello and welcome to another episode of I Didn't Sign Up for This. Let's see what we did or did not sign up for tonight. Carrie, what's going on?
Hey Tim, I want to talk about confidence and arrogance. I want to compare and contrast the two. I feel like there is an opportunity for us to explore confidence and understanding what true confidence is. But there's also the heed for all of us to avoid arrogance. So I've been doing a little bit of research on that, and I want to talk a little bit about it.
All right. So what is the difference between confidence and arrogance?
I have a lot of thoughts on it, but I feel like the difference in confidence and arrogance really boils down to a state of mind. So there are a lot of different things that you can put into play. You know, there's the study of the dark personality traits and the good personality traits, and it goes back to yin and yang and how we have good and bad in all of us, and we have the capability to think bad thoughts and do bad things just as much as we have the capability to do the opposite. And confidence is key. You have to believe in yourself. You have to love yourself. And you don't want to take it so far that you come off as arrogant, because that's counterproductive to being able to progress and have strong, solid relationships with people. And so I would say that a lot of it has to do with how we communicate with others, how we treat others. There are the points of compassion and being empathetic and being kind to people. You can still be confident. You don't necessarily have to be a martyr and make sure that everybody gets theirs and you do without, and you struggle with everything in life. I don't believe that that's what we're born to do. I don't believe that that's how we're set up to live our lives. I think that there would be no progression if none of us had confidence. However, arrogance halts our progression. And I think of somebody that I worked with a while ago who she had trouble in her interpersonal relationships because she tried to be motivating, but no one really responded to her, because instead of being open and sharing experiences and then listening and having a two-way communication, she felt the need to tell people how to live their life. Really, confidence it's a state of being. It's a state of feeling certain about a truth and something, being self-assured, believing in yourself. And if you contrast arrogance with confidence, confidence is really being self-assured and understanding your strategy and being self-aware and believing that you can achieve something. Arrogance is an attitude of superiority where maybe you become overbearing, or you make assumptions about other people, or you talk down to other people. And so she struggled with this quite a bit. And even in some of the sessions we had, I felt like I was being talked at as opposed to talked with. And it's very counterproductive in any career or any relationship that you have with someone. No one wants to be told what to do. And ultimately, we all want to be heard. If you're spending more time talking and telling people how to live their lives as opposed to listening to what they have to say and maybe sharing an example, then maybe you should look at the difference in confidence versus arrogance.
Right. Well, I think confidence inherently, as I feel, as I understand it for my own purposes, confidence is self-assured. It's a deeply held paradigm or belief that is held based on experience, and it does not need to be right. Arrogance, on the other hand, is afraid that it is wrong, and so it must be imposed upon other people. And so if you find yourself, or someone maybe is doing this to you, you find yourself imposing your perspective on someone else, demanding that they acquiesce to your absolute confidence in a given situation, then you've probably crossed over into arrogance. And the only reason to do that is that you are afraid that you might be wrong.
Yeah. Oh, I agree. You know, and it's funny, you have to be careful, because I think a lot of us in our lives, we struggle with confidence. It took a very long time for me to get to a point where I could truly say that I was confident. in myself, that I had self-confidence. And for some people, that's a very, very long road. And it's something that you should be proud of. When you can get to a point where you are self-assured and you believe in yourself, that only allows more opportunity and more room for growth. Arrogance actually stops growth because you're already at a point where you feel like you are superior and you know everything. Now, one of the things that I have seen multiple times, though, is a lot of times insecure people will mistake confidence for arrogance. And so really there's a whole package and there's a whole backbone to confidence that isn't there with arrogance. Confidence comes from experience. It comes from self-discovery and self-awareness. It comes from success. It comes from having to pick yourself up after failure. There's so many different lessons and stories that come along with confidence that maybe are a little more superficial when you're dealing with arrogance. I know years ago I worked with a company that there was a guy who worked at the company and he wanted to progress. And in anticipation of his progression, he went out and bought a very expensive car. Very expensive. And so he was in this leadership development program with a group of other people. And when he showed up with this really expensive car, they were all shocked by the fact that he had purchased it. Mind you, he was young and single, and so he didn't have family to support, and so he had some disposable income. Well, I remember this group of people, the group of his peers, were very judgmental and felt like he was very arrogant because he had anticipated progressing with the company and went out and purchased this car. So he, bought the cart before the horse, and they were very judgmental. Well, ultimately he struggled a little bit with his progression, but he did progress. And I will tell you that he was one of the nicest, most giving leaders that I had ever met. When I had the opportunity to work with him and get to know him, he did that as a way to drive himself to the goal. There was no arrogance in that action, yet a lot of the people that he worked with mistook his action for arrogance. And there are other similar situations out there where it's okay to dream big. It's okay to aim high. Nobody says that you have to just settle for the lowest until you by chance or somehow by the grace of God achieve it. And it's okay to work for it.
I do know because it reminds me of a client. This goes back, quite a ways, goes all the way back to the Carolinas back in those days. And I won't share names and stuff, but it's weird because he was only a client of mine after I moved far, far away, and I don't know why that is, because I could have helped him way back in the day, but I didn't. He didn't want me to. My old man used to tell me that the definition of an expert is anybody more than 50 miles from home with a briefcase, right? And so that makes you an expert. If you're more than 50 miles from home and you got a briefcase, come on in. Tell me what I'm doing wrong. Anyway, here's what this guy did. This guy had a very similar story, but at a different level. He didn't buy a Lamborghini or something or whatever, right? Some high-powered car to try to prove something to somebody, which maybe he was trying to prove something to somebody else. Maybe he was trying to prove something to himself. I think the people who felt offended by that were more jealous than they were quite sure that he was arrogant. They were jealous. Here's what this guy did, right? This guy worked as a lot maintenance guy on a car dealership lot, okay? Which means he swept parking lot and he washed the cars. That's what he did. He came to work in coveralls every day, right? And so while everybody else was throwing on, a Def Leppard t-shirt and zipping up some coveralls, all the other 20-somethings, he reads a book about dress for success, a self-help book. And he decides that he's going to take this guy's advice that says, do not dress for the job you have, dress for the job you want. Okay? And so he decides that next fateful morning that he is going to put on a button-up shirt, a silk tie, and then zip his coveralls up over all of it. Now, there's a V-neck on the coveralls, so you can see that he's wearing a shirt and tie under his coveralls, and he's emptying trash, washing cars, pushing broom at a big car lot. Okay? And the other lot attendants were livid. Oh my gosh. They made fun of that guy ruthlessly. And he tried to explain to them, I got this book about dress for success, and don't dress for the job you have, dress for the job you want. And I'm trying to improve myself. And they just were, all the other crabs in the bucket were absolutely maniacal. Playing pranks on him, trying to cut his tie off of his neck, all kinds of crap, right?
Wow.
Well, it took about 6 weeks of wearing the tie 5 and 6 days a week, every day underneath the coveralls, before the manager called him in and asked him what the heck is going on. He explained to him that he had a bigger vision for himself, and to throw money at ties was not a big deal, because I want to make something of my life. All right. Good. I'm glad you want to. Starting right now, $2 an hour raise, you're the lot supervisor for the maintenance crew. Okay? The manager had been doing it. There hadn't been one before. But the guy's thinking, hey man, for $80-$90 a week, let's make this kid lot supervisor and see what happens. So he walks out. You think they hated him before. Oh my gosh. They were so jealous and butthurt and hated this kid's guts. They just hated him. So he hums along as the quote-unquote lot supervisor, wearing his tie every day, everybody else hating him, but making $80 a week more than the rest of them make. And now, granted, that's basically double what they were getting paid. I mean, you're talking about a time when minimum wage was $3.50 an hour. And so he is outpacing them by a factor of 2. When all of a sudden, he goes to the manager and says, look, I want to be a sales guy. I'm already wearing the tie. I'm really good with people. I have a lot of names and numbers, friends. I can do this. I want to be a sales guy. And so the manager is like, okay, who's going to be the lot supervisor? And that was the real challenge for him. Who's going to be the lot supervisor if you're a sales guy? You're doing a good job. You're too valuable to me to be able to promote. And that's when he realized that it wasn't enough just to drive the car or wear the tie. You actually had to influence people for the better. You had to team build. And so all of this tie-wearing arrogance went out the window when he goes to one of the guys he had worked with for a long time on the lot, even before he became supervisor, and he offers this guy to pay out of his own pocket half the difference, $40 a week, to this guy if he will train to become the lot supervisor. Okay?
Wow.
Genius. I mean, it's genius.
Yeah.
But most people, it would never occur to them because they think, I have my advantageous position and, I deserve that extra $80 a week or whatever it is. No, he goes to his friend and he says, look, man, I need somebody on my team. And so if you will wear a tie and a button-up shirt underneath your coveralls and help me, I will give you half of the difference that I make. I will pay you an additional $40 a week, $1 an hour, out of my own pocket if you will do this. And so the kid says, yeah, I'm in. I'll absolutely do it. He said, and then when I'm ready to move up and on, you can become lot supervisor and you'll make an extra $2 an hour. Okay, man, I'm in. Absolutely. So it took about another 4 or 5 weeks before the manager noticed that there was a second guy out there with a shirt and tie, and that all the other guys thought he was super arrogant and super full of himself. And now there's a team of guys that are full of themselves, right?
Which is a threat to everybody that really doesn't want to go that extra mile or is insecure about it.
Oh, yeah. Everybody who wants the status quo or wants to not be judged by others who claim they want the status quo, they're other crabs in the bucket trying to hold people down, and that's what they do. And so it took a few weeks. The manager noticed that there's another guy out there in a shirt and tie. And so he goes to my buddy. He goes to the first guy. And he says, so what's going on with you? Why is there another guy out there in a shirt and tie? Oh, well, that's my lot attendant supervisor trainee. And he's like,
love it.
Well, that's fantastic. How... why does he want the job all of a sudden? What's the interest? Oh, because I gave him a raise. It's like, well, you don't have the power to give him a raise. Oh, no, I'm just paying him out of my own pocket. Well, what the manager recognized was an abundance of confidence. Now, bear in mind, at no point did he go to the manager and say, look, this is what I'm doing. Look at me. I'm changing. I'm better than all this. I need to be a sales guy. None of that stuff ever happened. He just took it upon himself to dig into his own pocket and build the business and make it happen. Okay? So, long story short, because it goes on for a few more years, actually, he winds up becoming the sales guy, and then becoming the assistant sales manager for a couple of years, and then the sales manager, and then he wound up owning a dealership, which is what he does to this day. He makes about $800,000 a year. Now, bear in mind, this guy dropped out of high school. He dropped out of high school when he was a junior, and he's about my age, but he's making $800,000 to $1 million a year, owning a dealership, slinging cars. He had to move out of the Carolinas down to the Atlanta area to actually get his dealership because nothing was available. And he was willing to move to make that happen. And it did take, 15, 18 years to get there. But gosh, now he's been doing it for a long, long time. And so you've got to understand the difference between confidence and arrogance. Arrogance is so afraid that it's wrong that it insists on being right. It insists on you kowtowing to it. You bow down to my almighty knowledge, my almighty alleged confidence. And confidence doesn't need that.
Right.
I know good and well when I go to bed at night, the overwhelming likelihood is that in a few hours, the birds are going to start singing and the sun's going to come up. It's happened every day of my life for my entire life, and I feel relatively confident it will happen again. And so I don't have to grab anybody by the lapels and convince them the sun's going to come up tomorrow. I promise you it will. Right? Of course, I don't have that many people telling me the sun's not going to come up tomorrow either. So maybe a better example would be, imagine that you are standing in the office looking out over the beautiful desert or whatever, right? Out there on the horizon, you see a beautiful, bright, sunshiny, cloudless day. So that makes you pretty confident about what the weather is going to do, right?
Right. Mm-hmm.
It's a cloudless day. We've seen a million cloudless days. So you go, you have a bite of lunch, come back to work, you work for a couple of hours, then you get up and walk to the same window. And now on the horizon, you see deep, dark, black clouds. What happens to your level of confidence in what the weather's going to be that day?
Oh, it decreases tremendously because you've had an event that changed it.
That's correct. It decreases immensely. Okay? Arrogance cannot allow for that decrease in confidence. Arrogance will not allow for that fluctuation.
Well, that makes sense. Okay.
The confident person will simply say, yeah, I was quite confident that the weather was going to do this, and now that position has changed because now I'm quite confident that it could go the other way and be a rainy afternoon. But arrogance has to be right. That's the difference between arrogance and confidence.
That makes sense. I think that I think that that's the best definition so far is arrogance insists on being right regardless, because being right is more important than anything else, where confidence, well, I'm confident, I'm comfortable, I'm secure with myself. And so if I make a mistake or I am wrong about something, I will admit it because I'm confident enough to handle the defeat. I know that I'm going to pick myself up and get back. So really being arrogant comes from a place of insecurity and vulnerability. And I can tell you that there have been times in my life where I've made arrogant comments, and I think the majority of that was because I was in a vulnerable spot. And I was more afraid of being vulnerable than I was about being my true self. And you walk away from that very unsatisfied. And I think that because it does come from a place of you don't want to show weakness, and you don't want to be vulnerable. You don't want to be perceived as vulnerable because it taps into a potential insecurity. And so I agree with that completely. I think, you can make jokes and make comments, and it might come from a funny place, but ultimately we all use our own coping mechanisms to avoid vulnerability. And so arrogance is actually a coping mechanism to avoid that. People learn and grow from confident people. All the mentors I've had in my life have been confident and not arrogant.
Because as you pointed out earlier, confidence comes from a position of personal experience.
Right. Well, let's talk about communicating. Have you ever walked away from a communication with an arrogant person and been utterly surprised at how pleasant it was? Communicating and talking to arrogant people is never pleasant. It puts all of the parties on the defense, and when you have somebody that you're dealing with and who just is adamant about their own position and that you need to accept their ideas, and people will avoid arrogant people. I guess that's the point I'm trying to make. So you can be in any position, in any company, anywhere in the world, and if you are an arrogant person, you will fail at leadership. Because you will have people that will appease you just to get you out of their hair. They don't want to deal with you. They're not going to learn from you. They're not going to walk away going, man, I had the greatest boss ever. Slightly arrogant, but man, he was awesome. They don't go hand in hand. And maybe it's not about how other people perceive you, or maybe it's not about perception. I hesitated a little bit with this topic because I know from a woman's perspective, and you can speak to a man's perspective, women struggle with confidence. And there are arrogant women out there. And if you look at where we've come so far in this podcast, you know that is actually is because of a lack of confidence. And I have worked very hard throughout my career and in my interpersonal relationships to lift other women up and help them feel confident, because I've been there. I've dredged through the mud of insecurity and lack of confidence. And it's not a place where a woman can actually live her full potential of beauty inside and out. It's a sad place. And so that's one thing that I wanted us to talk about. If we're going to compare and contrast confidence and arrogance, I mean, the biggest thing is you have to build yourself up. You have to believe in yourself, and that takes confidence. Now, I will tell you, when I came home from Argentina, I was involved with a guy that was not a good guy. He was very critical of me physically, emotionally, intellectually, very, very critical all the time. And with the fact that I was in my mid-20s and trying to find who I was, I grew up in a very regimented household. And I had to deal with being told what to do as opposed to being able to explore very much freedom at all. And then when I came home from South America, the first guy that I truly fell for was that guy. And over time, any of the confidence that I had, he managed to blow out like a candle. And I got to a point in my life where I didn't recognize myself anymore. I didn't stop to explore the person that was looking back in the mirror. I had forgotten how to do that because I was trying so hard to make everyone else happy that I forgot that I was more important. And through a series of events and obviously, he faded out of my life and I moved on. But the residual effect of that relationship was extremely taxing to my spirit and extremely taxing to me as a person and a woman. I never felt good enough. And I will tell you, my story is a common story because women struggle with being everything to everyone and they forget to be for themselves first. So through a series of life experiences and events and working very hard and reading a lot of self-help books, I would say I was probably around 32, and I had been really working on myself and really, going to school and working hard and really driving every goal I possibly could and getting that fight and that passion back. One day I was getting ready for work, and I will never forget this day. I was getting ready for work, and I looked in the mirror, and all of a sudden I recognized that woman staring back, and I found myself again. And I promise you that when you do that, man or woman, anybody in this world, when you look in the mirror and you get to a point in your life where you truly recognize that person looking back at you, nobody else's opinion or perception of you matters anymore. And that is true confidence. And it's such a struggle. So I earn my confidence and I wear it like a badge. And it doesn't mean I'm not vulnerable. It doesn't mean I don't say stupid things. It doesn't mean that I'm not trying to be the best version of me like everybody else on this planet. But ultimately, that is one mountain that I have climbed and conquered, and my confidence flag is right on the top. And so I strive, especially when I'm working with women, I strive to help them grow and develop that confidence so that you can let go of the arrogance or you can let go of the insecurity and you can embrace the life that we have. And so I want to be careful because the last thing I would ever want is for anybody to feel like, they need to be submissive and humble and things happen to them, not for them. And they, that takes away the power of creation and creating the life that you are born to live. So that's just a point that I wanted to make in this podcast because confidence is a beautiful thing. Arrogance shows that you have a little more work to do.
Right. No, I agree with that. As far as just coming at it from a man's perspective, I think everybody struggles with confidence simply because confidence is something that I think is earned through just living in the human condition. You don't just wake up one day and all of a sudden you're confident.
Right.
You have experiences. Experience after experience after experience, line by line, you build up that level of confidence about a given subject or a given issue. And in working with people in the past who've struggled with this, and like I say, it's a struggle for everybody. I mean, maybe you are, I don't know, Buddha and you're self-actualized, right? And congratulations if you are.
Well,
congratulations. Can I just say, you're awesome. You are, the return of Buddha or whatever. That's fantastic. The rest of us peons, I hope you won't judge us too harshly, and I hope you've got enough, tolerance for the rest of us buffoons. But, we struggle with confidence. We're not sure what to do or which way to go. The rest of us, we're living each day that we get up for the first time. And so we don't know where it's going to go. And so we throw back to our baseline of confidence of the things that we are in fact confident about, and then we try to build on that platform.
Well, and that's a
Right.
good point. Like, you don't have to be, yeah, just because I'm confident in who I am as a woman and who I am as a person, it doesn't mean that I'm confident in every aspect or every scenario of my life. Every time, I love getting up and speaking in front of people. It's one of my favorite things to do, whether it's a training or a presentation or whatever. Like, I am not that person that shies away from a microphone. However, every single time before I'm about to get up in front of someone, before I take that microphone, I have a flush of nerves from head to toe. And because in that moment, I'm so scared. It's the anticipation and what if I forget everything I'm going to say? And then I just go. And so maybe that's what contributes to being confident is you are strong enough to handle the adversity or the fear in the moment because you understand that you will make it to the other side.
Well, that, and you have to be confident enough to know that you are not confident in all areas or all elements of your life. I mean, that again, I sort of lay at the feet of the arrogant person, because the arrogant person is playing a role to convince you or themselves of how confident they are. And so they must be the world's foremost authority on everything. It goes back to our, conversations about the person who just has to have every answer and know absolutely everything. Well, that's arrogance. That's just arrogance. I'm reminded of the literal figure Don Quixote, right?
Uh-huh.
This is the guy who rode a donkey instead of a horse and has been known to challenge windmills to a battle. There's one line from that Don Quixote, and I'm sure I'll just butcher it, but it's something to the effect of, Don Quixote mounted his noble steed and rode off angrily in all directions. And if you imagine someone wielding a sword on the back of a donkey, riding in all directions, it's like...
I think I know that guy.
Okay. Anyway, because the fact of the matter is that we are not confident about absolutely everything. Of course we're not. We can't possibly know it all. And nobody expects you to know it all. But when you have that one or two things that you have experience with that you're confident about, and then you do line extensions on that one or two things, and then pretty soon you have a pretty broad scope of things that you feel pretty good about, and you realize that you're just sharing perhaps learning experiences with someone as opposed to telling them this is the way it is. And I think I recognize that in the arrogant persona when I'm working with people. The arrogant person is absolutely terrified inside. If you call them out on it in a sincere, loving, caring manner, they'll admit that to you. They'll cry like a baby. I don't know what to do. And so I go out there to the sales floor or to the production studio or the whatever. I'm just pulling out things that come to mind from clients. But maybe I'll think of somebody who's not a client. They go out to the nuclear power plant, right? Because I don't have anybody at nuclear power plant. I never have. They go out to that nuclear power plant and they say, meltdown be damned, I'm pushing the button or whatever, right? But if you take them aside and in a caring fashion, it goes back to the toxic people conversation. You take them aside in a caring fashion and say, look, I love you too much to let you think that treating other people this way is going to get you ahead or get you a date or get you a raise or get you anything but shunned from other people. They will usually absolutely drop that cloak of superiority and let you see inside. And they're just, they're a mess. Like all of us, they're a mess. But the beauty of that is that you can take the arrogant person, if you can get them to take that cloak of superiority off. I mean, they're only wearing it because they think you need them to wear it. I go back to the line in the movie Labyrinth. You remember that? So there's a line by David Bowie in the movie Labyrinth where he is talking to the protagonist, Sarah, and telling her that he has done absolutely everything for her. She wanted to be afraid, and he was frightening. Everything I've done for you. And that really is the mantra of the arrogant person. They think that people need them to know it all. They think that people need them to be perfect. And so it's not a jealous position or an enviable position. It's a pathetic, sad position. I see the truly arrogant person and I feel bad for them.
Well, it's exhausting.
It's absolutely exhausting to try to live up to those expectations that you have imposed upon yourself and ascribed to someone else. And that's what we do. We impose these expectations upon ourselves, and then we ascribe that demand to everyone else. And generally, it's just not true. Your employees, your friends, your lovers, your children, your family, your whatever, they don't want you to be perfect. They just want you to be you.
Well, and I think one of the common traits is pointing the finger at other people, because heaven forbid you make a mistake. Heaven forbid it be something that you've done. And so if something goes wrong on a project or work or relationship, well, it's everybody else's fault. It's not mine. Where I think a confident person, that mentality is, okay, you know what? I probably need to look at my behaviors and how I interacted with the situation and pull away from it whatever I can to have a better outcome next time. So that's the difference in self-reflection in any given scenario versus immediately closing off and pushing away or pushing the blame. Or most people don't care. Like, when there's an issue or there's a problem that needs to be resolved, most people don't care whose fault it is. It is not a blame game. It's a let's fix it and move past it. And so if you struggle with that point, it can be limiting, and it may not equate to arrogance in every scenario, but it is a common characteristic of someone who is arrogant. And so there isn't necessarily growth or opportunity to work on a team because you have made yourself an island.
Right. It's like my friend with the auto dealership. Mm-hmm. He realized that in order to move forward, he needed to build a team. And we live in a world where you just can't do it without a team. It's the difference between the archetype of the Lone Ranger, who, by the way, also had Tonto. He had a team, a small team. And then you compare it to the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, right? Mm-hmm. Where we are a team of diverse, original individuals, and we all have our elements of strength or what have you, but we all rely on each other in order to actually accomplish the goal, you know? I think I read somewhere that there were 2, possibly 3 skyscrapers on the face of the planet, each of which were owned entirely by a single individual. Every other major building, major construction project on the planet are owned by teams. We have to get that team mentality and mindset together in order to be able to accomplish things. Because if we don't, we are, as you put it, an island. And islands don't really go anywhere.
Right. So what do you think causes people we've touched on the vulnerability piece, and it can be, and we've touched on the insecurity piece, and truly it could be previous experiences that we've had, or insecurities that we have yet to overcome, or just, being afraid of not being good enough, which, still ties back into insecurity. Is there anything else that contributes to that arrogant mentality?
Well, I think that there probably is. People are complicated and they're subtle and they're nuanced, and it's really hard to know. I've talked to people who really struggled with things like this, and it boiled down to instances of abuse as a child, or abuse at the hands of teammates or peers, in sports or maybe social settings, where people develop the notion that they are not good enough. And so they spend their days screaming at the top of their lungs that they are, in fact, good enough. And that's what arrogance is. Confidence has no need to pronounce itself. Confidence has no need to announce itself at a party because it is whatever it is. It doesn't need to be more. It is good enough. Whereas arrogance is just never quite good enough.
Gotcha.
And so it has to be announced and pronounced over and over again so that people can be convinced of its greatness. Because it's empty and it's fearful. Could be any number of things that lead to people to form these opinions about their self on this path to self-actualization. And it's hard to know. Everybody's different.
Well, that makes sense. I will tell you the difference in a confident leader will understand that they are not necessarily good at everything. And so they will acquire a team that will help navigate the waters of the different pieces of a project. An arrogant leader will actually try to take it all on themselves. And that's, like I said, that's exhausting. It's not okay to run at such a high speed to stay ahead of everybody else to the point that you miss out on your entire life. You know, you miss out on your entire life because you're so busy missing the point. You know, and I feel like that's what we need to heed if we're going to progress. Confidence is required. If you are not confident in a goal or a vision that you have to move forward, you will never achieve that goal or that vision. It's just a dream. And it's okay to dream. But just as much as lack of confidence will inhibit your progression, arrogance will do the same. So you really have to look at the big picture and understand the attributes that you have and what you need to work on and self-talk and being positive. I mean, confidence comes from a positive space. It's something that we can build on. It also can potentially ebb and flow based on your experiences. And so you have to do that self-discovery and that self-analysis to understand where you are on that confidence scale and really keep the compassion and the love and the vision that brought you to where you are today.
That's right. I mean, I think that's the point of all of it. Confidence is born out of self-realization. Okay? I am confident I wear a size 13 shoe. I am confident I play tennis left-handed because I realize that about myself. I know that about myself. And those are very topical sorts of things, but you dig a little bit deeper into the human psyche, into the person that I am, and I form these opinions about myself. And if I can just go in and realize exactly who I am and how I feel about things and accept myself for who I am, then the natural outgrowth is confidence. The arrogant person does not know who they are. They don't know what they're going for. They're insecure and unsure. And thusly, it's arrogance. It's just not confidence. And people can tell the difference. They can just tell the difference.
That's true. Well, it's a wall we put around ourselves to protect ourselves. And the only problem is it may keep everybody out, but it keeps us in. And that's not okay. You have to believe in yourself before other people will believe in you. And sometimes, okay, just like going back to our stories, right? Sometimes the fact that you believe in yourself and you're putting your goal or your vision in motion, you may have people that look at you and because it triggers their own insecurities, they may be judgmental. But that's where self-belief and self-awareness is key because it will keep you going. It will keep you moving in that right direction when you have people that are irritated because you bought a certain car or because you wore a tie to work. And it's okay. It's okay if they judge you because it doesn't change who you are. And so that's something that you have to take into consideration. That's why you have to believe in yourself before anybody else will.
It goes back to that notion of designing your life as opposed to living by default. You cannot live your life, make your decisions, define who you are by abdication. I'm just going to sit here and wait to see what happens. Well, that is a recipe for misery and loneliness and disaster. That's not what you're here on earth to do. You know, there's actually an old Chinese idiom that my father would paraphrase and just absolutely destroy. He'd put redneck all over it. But it went something like this, okay? Oh, he'd just spill redneck all over everything. But I love him, right? It went something like this. He would look at you and he would say, you know, a man would have to stand very still with his mouth wide open an awful long time before a fried chicken flies in. Right? But that's life by abdication. I'm going to stand here with my mouth open, see what flies in. And if it tastes pretty good, I'll eat it. It does not work. It's a recipe for disaster.
Well, and you would waste a lot of time.
And to your point, you know, having a plan is the best power of all. Know what you're going to do with the ball before it comes to you if you're playing baseball.
Right.
You know, that's every 10-year-old playing Little League knows exactly what that mantra sounds like. What am I going to do with the ball if it comes to me? And so if you will sit down at night and design your life, you will find yourself with an absolute abundance of confidence after a very short time, 30 days, 60 days. If you'll just sit down every night and say, what do I want? Okay, great. How do I get it? Right? What's my goal? What's my strategy? What are my tactics within the strategy?
Right.
And write it out. Put little check boxes out beside it. Because now you are actually living your life in this three-dimensional reality, as opposed to abdicating your power and waiting for whatever is going to happen to happen.
I agree wholeheartedly. I mean, that's true with any project that you do in any business, too. You have to have the beginning and the end in sight. You have to know where you are right now and where you want to go and how you're going to get there. And if you have that, that's half the battle. I agree.
Excellent. Once again, we agree. So, sounds like a pretty good place to wrap it up.
All right. I'm confident that you're right. Sorry.
Oh, I see what you did there. That was pretty clever. I'll tip my hat to that one. That's pretty sharp. All right. Thanks everyone for showing up and listening to us wax philosophic about the meaning of our own lives, and we hope you get some value out of it as well. We will be back in a couple days with another episode. We're looking forward to that one. It's going to be a little bit more esoteric than anything we've talked about before. We're just doing the research for it right now. But until then, dream your life.
And live your dreams.
Okay, talk to you next time.
Bye-bye.